My ex was evicted from his apartment, Jack. I've asked him to come and stay with us for a while. Those were the words that left Jack staring at his wife in stunned silence, his fork frozen halfway to his mouth. Rosemary didn't blink. She didn't even flinch. She just took another sip of wine and added, "Don't start any drama. My mind's made up." She had no idea that the calm man sitting across from her would quietly turn that moment into the most devastating lesson in self-respect and revenge she'd ever witness. What happened next will make you question everything you think you know about marriage, pride, and betrayal. Viewers, imagine your spouse inviting their ex to live under your roof. Would you stay calm or would you strike back? If you were in Jack's shoes, what would you do? Would you let another man, your wife's ex, live under your roof in the name of sympathy? Let's hear your thoughts in the comments. It was a Thursday evening in Chicago. Rain tapped gently against the window panes as Jack set the dinner table, humming a soft tune. The apartment smelled of rosemary chicken, ironically her favorite. He had just lit the last candle when his wife's voice cut through the quiet. "Jack, did you hear me?" He turned slowly, still holding a napkin. "You said, your ex?" "Yes," she replied sharply. "Derek. He got evicted this week. He's got nowhere else to go. I told him he could stay in the guest room until he gets back on his feet." Jack blinked. Once. Twice. He thought it was a joke. "You told him?" "Yes, I did," she said with the casual arrogance of someone who believed she had every right to decide. "Don't make this a big deal, Jack. It's temporary. I'm just trying to help a friend." A friend. That word struck him harder than any slap could. He swallowed, his voice calm. "And you didn't think to ask me first?" She rolled her eyes, pushing past him to grab her phone from the counter. "Jack, please. You always overthink everything. Derek's not a threat. You have nothing to worry about." Jack stared at her, feeling his chest tighten, not with jealousy but with humiliation. He saw the shift clearly now. The same woman who once blushed when he called her beautiful now talked to him like he was a child. He forced a faint smile. "If your mind is made up, then fine." "It is," she said, and left the room. That night, Jack lay awake beside her, staring at the ceiling. The rain outside had stopped, but inside his chest, a storm had begun. He replayed her words over and over, each one cutting deeper. "He'll be here by the weekend. Don't start any drama." It wasn't just about Derek. It was about dignity, and as he lay there, a cold clarity washed over him. He whispered softly, almost to himself, "Before that man ever steps through my door, she'll learn what betrayal feels like." The next morning, Jack woke up before dawn. The sky outside their apartment was pale blue, the kind that makes the city look fragile. Rosemary was still asleep beside him, her phone glowing faintly on the nightstand. Another message from Derek. He glanced at it, then turned away. He didn't need to read it. He already knew what it meant. Boundaries no longer existed in this marriage. When Rosemary woke, she found him in the kitchen, whistling, cheerful, frying eggs. He looked like a man at peace. "Morning, sweetheart," he said softly, kissing her on the cheek. "I thought I'd make breakfast." She raised a brow, slightly thrown off by his calmness. "You're in a good mood today." "Why wouldn't I be?" Jack smiled. "Your friend's coming to stay. I figured I'd get used to being a good host." Rosemary smirked. "That's the spirit." She sat down, scrolling through her phone while sipping her coffee. But beneath that warm smile, Jack's mind was a storm. He had decided something that even she couldn't sense. A decision that would change both of their lives forever. When Rosemary left for work, Jack cleaned the dishes, then went straight to his study. He pulled open a drawer and removed a small brown envelope. Inside were bank papers, the deed to their home, and their marriage certificate. By noon, Jack was downtown, quietly closing all the loose ends of their shared life. He opened a new account and transferred every cent from their joint savings into it. Then he called his lawyer, an old college friend. "I need to update my estate plan," Jack said. "Today." The lawyer paused. Everything okay at home? Jack smiled faintly. Better than ever. That evening, when Rosemary returned, the apartment looked perfect. Candles lit, dinner ready, jazz music playing. She thought his earlier calmness was genuine. She even laughed at the table, teasing him about how mature he was being. Jack poured her wine and nodded at everything she said, but his eyes were distant. Every time she spoke, he studied her face, the woman who once cried when he caught a cold, now talking about her ex with comfort and ease. Later that night, she fell asleep watching TV. Jack sat beside her for a long while, just watching her breathe. The same woman who promised, "It's you and me forever." He whispered, barely audible, "You broke something I can't fix." Then he stood, turned off the lights, and picked up his phone. He texted his real estate agent, "List it tomorrow. Don't tell anyone it's my house." Jack's revenge had begun, not with noise but with silence. The following days unfolded like a movie Jack was directing, except the actors didn't know the script. On the surface, everything looked peaceful. Jack still kissed Rosemary goodbye each morning. He still texted her during lunch breaks. To anyone watching, they looked like a normal couple. But behind that calm exterior, Jack was dismantling their shared life, piece by piece. The first thing he did was move all their essential documents, property deeds, insurance papers, tax records, into a locked safe box at his office. Then he went further. He changed the passcodes to their online banking and redirected mail deliveries to his workplace. Every move was quiet, every detail precise. He also canceled their electricity auto renewal and changed the Wi-Fi password. By the time Derek was scheduled to move in, the house would appear perfectly normal, until it wasn't. That Wednesday, Rosemary came home earlier than usual. Jack was sitting in the living room flipping through a real estate magazine. She dropped her purse on the sofa and sighed. "You're really taking this whole thing well?" she said. He looked up, smiling faintly. "Should I be worried about something?" She chuckled, mistaking his calm for weakness. "Not unless you plan on competing with my ex for the guest room." Jack laughed lightly, but inside her words landed like glass shattering on concrete. She didn't even notice the flicker in his eyes. She just kept talking. About Derek, his bad luck. How kind she felt offering him help. That night, when Rosemary stepped out for drinks with her co-workers, Jack opened her laptop. He didn't read her messages, he didn't need to. What he was looking for were her emails from HR. He wanted to know how dependent she'd become on her high-paying job. She was earning well, too well, and she flaunted it every chance she got, often reminding him how her salary now covered more than half the bills. It wasn't her success that hurt him. It was the way she weaponized it. So Jack began preparing the next step, something that would hit harder than anger. He drafted an email to her company's HR department, attaching documents that proved he was the property owner and sole taxpayer for the apartment she claimed as her residence on company records. A small inconsistency, but one that would raise eyebrows. He didn't send it yet. Not yet. The timing had to be perfect. By Friday, the house was spotless, quiet, and strangely cold. Rosemary packed a few extra towels for Derek and filled the guest room with new sheets. Jack watched her, smiling gently, his eyes unreadable. When she noticed him staring, she smirked. "What?" "Nothing," he said softly. "I was just thinking about how fast things change." "Change is good," she replied. He nodded. "Yes, sometimes it's necessary." That night, Jack slept soundly for the first time in days, because the moment she turned off the lights, he knew. By the time her ex arrived, the version of Jack she used to control would no longer exist. 2 nights before Derek was supposed to show up, the apartment looked like a Valentine's card come alive. The table glowed under soft candlelight. The air carried the scent of basil and garlic, and jazz murmured from the speakers. Rosemary walked in, startled for a second by how beautiful it all looked. "Wow," she said, dropping her purse. "What's the occasion?" Jack smiled, folding the napkin across her lap the way he used to. I thought we could have one quiet evening. Just you and me before our guest arrives. She laughed. You're unbelievable, Jack. I knew you'd come around. He raised his glass. To honesty, he said, clinking hers. And to people showing who they truly are before it's too late. She frowned slightly. What's that supposed to mean? He shook his head. Just a toast. Drink. The wine was smooth, her favorite brand. They talked about trivial things, the office gossip, her promotion, the new furniture she wanted. Jack listened as though every word mattered. Inside, he was rehearsing each move of the plan that had kept him awake for nights. After dessert, he asked her to take a short walk with him. The air's nice, he said. Let's step out for a minute. Outside, the driveway was unusually empty. Rosemary stopped, blinking. Where's my car? Jack's voice was calm. Sold it this afternoon. What? She spun toward him. You did what? He looked straight at her. Remember the joint account we used to pay for it? I withdrew my half. Consider it even. Her face darkened. You can't just... I can. He interrupted quietly. And I did. She opened her mouth to shout, but he handed her a small paper bag instead. Inside were folded clothes, her phone, and a set of printed documents. She glanced down and froze. Divorce papers? Jack's expression didn't change. You wanted Derek close. You'll be more comfortable there. I'll send the rest of your items to you over there. Her hand trembled. You're kicking me out? No, he said evenly. You chose to leave when you decided he belonged here. For a second, silence swallowed the street. Then she laughed bitterly, shaking her head. You're pathetic, Jack. You think this makes you a man? He turned toward the door, keys in hand. No, it makes me free. The lock clicked behind him. Through the glass, Rosemary stood motionless under the porch light, clutching the bag that held the remnants of her marriage. The candles inside still burned on the table, their soft flames swaying like tiny witnesses to a love that had died quietly. The night air bit through Rosemary's dress as she stumbled toward the hotel, the paper bag pressed to her chest like a shield. She looked wild, eyes red, hair disheveled, heels scraping the pavement. Every step echoed one bitter word in her mind. How dare he? At the reception desk, she demanded Derek's room number. I'm his guest, she insisted. The clerk hesitated but finally gave in. Moments later, she was knocking hard on his door. It swung open and Derek appeared, shirtless, drink in hand, half drunk and unconcerned. Rose, it's almost midnight. She pushed past him, tossing the bag onto the bed. I need to stay here tonight. He stared at her, blinking. What's going on? She laughed, a sharp, broken sound. Jack threw me out. He actually kicked me out of my own house, said I should come stay with you. Derek frowned, clearly more annoyed than surprised. You told him I was moving in? Yes, of course. He overreacted like a child. But I figured he'd understand. For a moment, silence. Then Derek chuckled, shaking his head. I think you handled things the wrong way, Rose. Her face twisted. Excuse me? He set down his drink. I don't know how else to say it. This is complicated. She blinked. You said you had nowhere to go. That's true. Something in her snapped. I stood up for you. Against my husband. He laughed softly, almost pitying her. And look where that got you. When she tried to sit, he picked up the bag and shoved it toward her. You can't stay here, Rose. I'm sorry, but I can't deal with this drama right now. Derek, please, just one night, she pleaded. Good night, Rosemary. He opened the door. Try Jack. Maybe he'll change his mind. The door shut. She stood in the hallway, frozen. The reality sank in like ice water. Derek didn't care. He never had. The man she defended so fiercely had used her pride against her. An hour later, she was sitting on a bench outside the hotel, shivering. Her phone buzzed repeatedly with automated messages. Bank account access denied. Password reset successful. Subscription canceled. Jack had wiped her out completely. She tried calling him, but it went straight to voicemail. She texted, "Jack, please, let me come home. I'm sorry." No reply. By dawn, her tears had dried into streaks on her face. She walked back to the apartment hoping, just hoping that maybe he'd open the door. But the locks had been changed, and a sleek new security system blinked red where her old key used to fit. For the first time in her life, Rosemary understood what silence felt like when it wasn't peaceful. It was punishment. A week later, Rosemary sat in her friend Paula's small apartment, staring at the pale blue envelope on the coffee table. Her hands trembled as she opened it. Inside was a court summons. Petitioner, Jack Hamilton. Grounds for divorce: psychological cruelty, willful disrespect, and emotional abandonment. Tears welled in her eyes, but what broke her wasn't the words. It was the precision, the calm, deliberate cruelty of it. Jack had filed quietly, efficiently, and with no hesitation. Paula touched her shoulder. "Rose, you should talk to him. Maybe he'll reconsider." Rosemary laughed weakly. "You don't understand. This isn't anger anymore. This is punishment." Across town, Jack sat in his lawyer's office, going through the case files. His attorney, David Pierce, glanced up. "You documented everything?" Jack nodded. "Every word, every message, every conversation after that night." David smirked. "You even recorded her?" Jack looked out the window. "She told me her mind was made up. I just made sure mine was too." The case file contained voice recordings, Rosemary's tone dismissive and cold, her words unfiltered. "Jack, Derek's moving in. Don't start any drama. My mind is made up." In court, it played like a confession. The judge raised an eyebrow. Rosemary's lawyer tried to interrupt, but the evidence spoke louder than any argument. Jack sat quietly while she tried to defend herself. "It wasn't like that. I was trying to help someone in need. It was a misunderstanding." The judge cut her off. "Inviting an ex-partner into your marital home without your spouse's consent is not compassion, Mrs. Hamilton. It's humiliation." Each word landed like a hammer. Rosemary's lip quivered, but she said nothing. When the gavel finally hit, the verdict was clear. The house, the savings, all belonged to Jack. Outside the courthouse, the cameras clicked. Someone had leaked the story. Marketing executive's marriage ends in scandal. Her company issued a statement the next morning. Effective immediately, Mrs. Rosemary Hamilton's employment has been terminated. She stood in her friend's kitchen later that day, staring blankly at her reflection in the microwave door. Jack's voice from the past echoed in her mind. Soft, patient, almost gentle. "Before he steps through my door, you'll learn what betrayal feels like." Now she understood. Betrayal wasn't always cheating. Sometimes it was arrogance, the quiet cruelty of believing someone would never walk away. That evening, she sent Jack one final message. "I never thought you could be this cold." He read it. He didn't reply. Instead, Jack closed his phone, leaned back on his couch, and exhaled deeply. The house was quiet again, finally his. But peace didn't taste like victory. It tasted like something heavier, something hollow. Still, he told himself it was worth it. Some lessons needed to be taught once, but remembered forever. The days that followed were strangely peaceful. For the first time in years, Jack woke up without a knot in his chest. The silence that once felt like punishment now felt like freedom. He had cleared the house of every trace of Rosemary, her clothes, her perfume, even the framed pictures she loved hanging on the staircase. It wasn't bitterness anymore. It was healing. He had stopped asking why she did what she did. Some questions, he realized, didn't deserve answers. Each morning, he brewed his coffee, opened the windows, and let the sun spill in. The house no longer felt haunted by betrayal. It was becoming his again. Jack threw himself into work, and soon, things began to shift. His business, which had been struggling during the chaos of his marriage, started to flourish. Clients who had once disappeared began calling back. Even his employees noticed the difference in him. His calm confidence, his quiet determination. He wasn't trying to prove anything to anyone anymore. He was simply living. One Friday evening, Michael, his longtime friend, convinced him to come to a small networking dinner. Jack hesitated at first. He wasn't ready to mingle, but something inside him said it was time. The restaurant buzzed softly with laughter and music. Jack sat at the corner, nursing a glass of wine, when he heard a gentle voice say, "You look like someone who doesn't want to be here." He turned and saw her. Clara. A woman with kind eyes and an easy smile. She wasn't dressed to impress. She just carried a quiet grace that drew people in. They talked, not about pain or love lost, but about life. Simple, ordinary life. He didn't feel the need to hide his scars. She didn't flinch when he mentioned he was divorced. As the night deepened, Jack found himself laughing again, genuinely. When he drove home later, the city lights blurred through his windshield, and for the first time in a long time, his heart felt light. He realized he wasn't healing because someone new had entered his life. He was healing because he had finally let go. Meanwhile, across town, Rosemary sat alone in a small rented apartment. The silence around her wasn't peaceful. It was punishing. The man she had betrayed was moving on, and the one she betrayed him for had vanished. She had traded a diamond for dust. Jack, on the other hand, was beginning to see the beauty in starting over. His nights were no longer filled with anger, and his mornings came with gratitude. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't loud. It's the sound of your own laughter returning after heartbreak. 6 months later, Jack's life looked nothing like it had before. His eyes, once shadowed by pain, now carried a quiet steadiness. His days were structured, peaceful, full of purpose. He had moved into a new apartment, a smaller, simpler place that somehow felt like home the moment he walked in. He had stopped keeping track of Rosemary's life, not because he didn't care, but because her name no longer triggered anything in him. The storm had passed. One evening, as the sun melted into the horizon, Jack sat on his balcony sipping tea and watching the city lights flicker to life. His phone buzzed with a message from Clara. "Don't forget, tomorrow's the fundraiser at the community center. I saved you a seat." He smiled faintly and typed back, "I'll be there." Life wasn't perfect, but it was honest now, and that made all the difference. The next day at the event, Jack mingled easily among people. He laughed, spoke, and even volunteered to help with a local mentorship program. For years, he had poured his energy into fixing someone who didn't want to be fixed. Now, he was using that same energy to help others find themselves. When Clara found him later, she grinned. "You look like a man who finally figured out what peace feels like." Jack chuckled softly. "Maybe I have." She studied him for a moment. "You're not angry anymore, are you?" He shook his head. "No. Anger keeps you chained to the past. I'm done being a prisoner." That night, when he returned home, Jack opened his laptop and began writing, a letter to himself. It wasn't about revenge or regret. It was a reminder of everything he'd survived. "Dear Jack, you didn't lose her. You found yourself, and that's worth more than anything you left behind." He folded the letter neatly and slipped it into a drawer. Then he turned off the lights and stood by the window, watching the moonlight spill across his living room floor. He thought of the man he used to be, desperate for love, terrified of being alone. That man was gone. What remained was someone wiser, calmer, and stronger. In another part of the city, Rosemary passed him once in a cafe. She froze, hoping he'd notice her. He didn't. His laughter filled the room, and she realized, with a pain that sank deep into her chest, that he had moved on, and she never would. Jack had finally reclaimed his story. As he walked out into the night, the air cool against his skin, He whispered a quiet prayer of gratitude, not for what he lost, but for what he found within himself. Because sometimes the greatest victory after heartbreak isn't revenge, it's peace. There's a quiet kind of freedom that comes after pain, not loud, not triumphant, but steady, like a sunrise after a long storm. That's what Jack felt now. A year had passed since the night he closed the door on Rosemary and walked away from everything that once defined him. His company had promoted him to project manager. He'd paid off his debts, joined a local running club, and found peace in the rhythm of simple living. He no longer measured success by possessions or people, but by peace of mind. Every morning he brewed his coffee, opened the window, and let the city breathe around him. The sounds of car horns, chatter, and distant laughter no longer irritated him. They reminded him that life moves on, with or without you, and that healing happens when you stop looking back. But one Friday evening, as Jack was leaving the office, he saw a familiar figure by the sidewalk. Rosemary. She looked thinner, worn down, her once polished look replaced by exhaustion. Her voice trembled as she spoke. "Jack, can we talk?" He hesitated, then nodded slightly. They walked to a nearby bench beneath a street lamp. "I've been looking for you," she said softly. "I wanted to apologize for everything. I lost my job, my apartment, even my friends. Derek disappeared after everything. Her voice cracked. "I don't know how I became that person." Jack watched her in silence, the city lights reflecting in his calm eyes. Tears rolled down her cheeks. "You were a good man, Jack. I just didn't see it." He nodded. "You didn't want to, but I'm glad you see it now." They sat for a moment, the hum of traffic filling the silence between them. Then Jack stood, hands in his pockets. "Take care of yourself," he said gently. He turned and kept walking, disappearing into the glow of the city night, a man no longer broken but rebuilt. Back home, Jack sat at his desk and finished his journal, one he had been writing since the night everything fell apart. He wrote, "Pain is a teacher, betrayal is a mirror, forgiveness is freedom. I once thought love was about holding on. Now I know it's about knowing when to let go." He closed the book and placed it on the shelf, beside a framed photograph, not of his wedding, but of himself standing at a mountain peak from his recent trip to Colorado, smiling into the wind. That smile said everything. Jack had finally learned that peace isn't found in another person. It's built, quietly, patiently, within yourself. And sometimes, walking away isn't the end of the story. It's the beginning of the life you were meant to live.